Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome 1, 2, and 3 to Ascension 5, the last group. Everything's falling apart over here, including my microphone. Let's take a look at our schedule. We are on the final group, Missing Links. It's 9 p.m. here, local time. Shambler and lucifirius won the random number guesser, so they will take on each other in Repulsion. Be the first time we see lucifirius in competitive action. Some interesting chats happening over here. Let's take a look at the specific group that we're going to be playing in here, our final one. Shambler should be the favorite here, having gone to the semifinals of the last tournament, competing with Niblime for that grand final spot. Went to Niblime, of course, but this time around, recovering from a food coma, but not alcohol. He might be a little bit slumbering here in his opening match. lucifirius, on the other hand, is debutant. What is his skill level going to be like? And Biddy B, Protoss, as usual. Popping straight back in now. Let's take a look. And yes, indeed, we have all three races, as Lotus Gates points out. And we'll see if we can just get this one on the road for you guys. I am bringing you the action solo this time around. Shambler needs only to type R for us to begin. There it is. Let us get this underway. Our last group. We have never done 4 groups before, and maybe for good reason, right? We have lucifirius here on the bottom left-hand side. He is the Glacial Terran. And we have the Mango Zerg. That's Shambler in the top right. I think both of our players are going to be relatively cold here. I don't think any of them have been playing ahead of the tournament. Benno did do a warm-up game against 3 Crow before his group, which did not award him any wins, unfortunately. But I have not seen Shambler on. I have not seen Lucy on as far as like actually playing games go, and I would say the same is true of Mr. Biddy B. We have some gas happening over here relatively early on. So that could prove interesting. And as we take a moment to get settled in here, the Drolath is leaving the building. Shambler going to go ahead and scout his opponent relatively early. And I'm guessing it's going to be a Hydrith. Needs a little bit more minerals to make it happen. Just about done. Does go ahead and go for it. So it'll probably be a fast Skither Core. On lucifirius' side, he's banking on the Fulcrum opener. He doesn't have enough gas quite yet. It seems like he could have had a slightly more optimized build order. And, yeah, he isn't interested in scouting his opponent here. Going to be maybe scouting with his 12th by-the-way worker. He's going to put down that Fulcrum. Now, Shambler is the kind of guy to use this Droleth to attack the Mason building the Fulcrum. So that's something to keep in mind. His Hydra then is nearly complete, but if that does end up getting scouted at any point by Lucy, he can counter it pretty easily with a Watchdog, if he's worried about a Skither Core opener. Actually adding a Stockade here as well. So this is interesting. Yep, there's the Droleth harassment. One worker should be pulled to dissuade this Droleth from continuing the assault. Actually went in and attacked the Fulcrum for one of those shots. Look at this, even 2 workers being pulled to deal with this threat. Can you believe the dastardly lengths that Shambler will go to tickle his opponent? Obviously, you should be pulling these guys right back on. One of them could, of course... I thought maybe there was a burrow. There it is. There's the customary Shambler burrow. And the customary Skither Core opener. Won't be scouted. But a Goliath is already on the way. I reckon the Goliath will pop out relatively soon. The Stockade is going to be used almost exclusively for the Vestry, I believe. And we are now starting to see some additional gas harvesting. And Ahmed is coming out. And the Goliath is indeed out, but I don't know if it's going to immediately march across the map. Oh, did he notice that? I don't think he noticed that. The Skither Core is going to come in and make itself known, but there is no Watchdog over here. So that is going to require the Goliath to return home to deal with that. He should pull this Mason that's under attack away from the unit, but unfortunately he's going to lose that. He might even lose another one, because his Goliath is so far away. Queuing up another one over at the Fulcrum. Yeah, 2 workers is, I would say, 2 more than Shambler probably should have gotten. But he's dangerously close to getting another one there, but would have had to sack the Skither Core for the opportunity. Back at his base, he does have a natural going. It's nearly complete. And he has more Skither Cores. He's actually... I don't think that more Skither Cores is a good answer here, because Goliaths are clearly what lucifirius likes. So I really don't think that that's going to be optimal here. He's pairing them with Hurricanes. That's going to allow him to defeat the first couple of units that come out there on the ground for Shambler, adding a macro hatch. The Skither Cores are indeed over here, but, you know, the Watchdog is going to zone that way. Even picks the right target automatically there, so a bit of luck, perhaps, for lucifirius, picking off the wounded Skither Core. A Cyclops on the way to back up Ahmed and his Goliath friends. Just a macro hatch. A Kagrant over here for anti-ground. I mean, Ahmed can absolutely break that open. And I think even though... Okay, yeah, there's 3 Skither Cores here, but the 2 Goliaths and the 2 Cyclops are going to be more than enough to deal with that. So, depending on when lucifirius wants to move out, he absolutely can do some damage here. Adding the Vestry. Ahmed will go ahead and burn that. 3 Skiths is not going to be enough to deal too much damage to the worker line over here, and this second Watchdog is nearly completed as well, so that's even going to add more insult to injury. Ooh, narrowly avoiding losing one of those Skither Cores, but it's so very bruised, I don't know that it's going to be able to hold off this mech push. We do have some Hydras being made, but if the Circuith goes down before then, we could see some pretty good play here from lucifirius, where he can take the tempo and use it, especially if he ends up pathing these reinforcements up. Technically, obviously, these buildings could be harassed by the Skither Cores. Maybe the Vestry could be the main target there. This Kagrant is not yet mutated into a Circuith, but it doesn't take that much time, so it really depends on whether or not the charge is instantaneous. It looks like it will be, and he's instantaneously going to dive bomb onto that Circuith. The Hydras should charge forward here, but okay, well, he doesn't end up really committing to the attack there. It felt like he absolutely could have. And at least popped the first Circuith. Especially since he had already committed so deeply into it. It feels like maybe he should have emphasized that a little bit more. He has a Shaman on the way, as well as a pretty healthy stack of mech and clerics. Now his army has been engaged upon elsewhere. One of the Goliaths already being focused down. Looks like maybe a Cyclops was picked off earlier as well, because 2 of them were with this army earlier. The Skither Core is finding it a little bit difficult to chase down that Goliath, but eventually they'll do the trick. And remember, this whole time, you know, the Hurricanes could have turned around to attack the Hydras, the Cyclops could have kited backwards here, and actually, if that Cyclops stays alive, that will be a non-trivial amount of AoE damage to deal with the stacks. I just hope that lucifirius doesn't take the wrong angle here, because he is going to be behind in workers, already is, in fact, behind in workers for a little bit. Meanwhile, if we pan on over again to this base, it's providing a lot of minerals, and there was a macro hatch made earlier, so Zorka is coming as well. I think that'll be Gorger Cores. Shambler is a fan of Gorger Cores. A Spraith here to counter any would-be drops, but there's not really much else going on here, and lucifirius is just going to expand. We do have 12 Hydras and just a scant few Skiths. That number of Hydras could absolutely run roughshod over this Terran army, but they would have to get the right kind of angle. And right now, it looks like lucifirius is mostly concerned about just holding his position. He does have a couple Shamans out that can absolutely help with sustain. The Clerics can focus down, like healing onto one particular target to prevent the bursting from doing too much damage. But I think 12 Hydras is still quite a lot. So there is potentially kill pressure here, but a lot of it will depend on the initial engagement, right? If this Goliath could tuck itself in a little bit more, that could definitely help. But over towards the third, or one of the potential third locations anyway, the ground army is indeed going to get some stuff. This Goliath is on a move command, so it's actually not going to respond automatically, which, you know, maybe could have helped lucifirius out there a little bit. He's adding more Goliaths, slowly but surely. The first Hydra is just going to go ahead and scout out and see what's going on here. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but the Clerics are on the front line, occupying a lot of the Hydra's attacks, but obviously when they get popped by focus, okay, yeah, sure, the Shaman is even going to get popped as well. But I think, honestly, the key winner here is the Cyclops. The longer you stick around trying to burst down those wounded units, the ones that are being healed by Clerics in particular, the longer you are going to be standing inside the Cyclops damage zones. That can absolutely help out quite a bit there. Third base being put down here by Shambler. Got to get my camera hotkeys in order, of course. Doesn't look like a tier up is anywhere in the cards here for either of our players, but in particular, I'm thinking Shambler. Slowly getting more workers over here, but he's at quite the deficit right now. And that means if Shambler does lose a decent chunk of his military, it'll just be a little bit easier for him to focus on building up his workers, or building up his military again. A couple of Gorger cores are not going to do too much to the Watchdogs, right? He needs like a much larger mass of those. You know, you definitely need more Gorger cores than there are Watchdogs, that's for sure. But he might be able to splash out some of the damage here. All right, refocusing his military. Ooh, he can easily pick off one of those. That was a big mistake there from Shambler. Well, I say big mistake. I'm not sure that it matters too much. The Shambler macro is getting out of hand, and he's adding another macro hatchet, in fact, so... Very, very healthy saturation in a number of bases. I definitely feel like at this stage, lucifirius is behind the 8-ball, adding another fulcrum to add more military. But his military is stronger than Shambler's, for sure. It's just a question of whether or not he can successfully, you know, make things happen on the field of battle. And I think it's also, when I say stronger, it's also dependent on the engagement. I mean, a lot of what Shambler has militarily speaking is pretty far away anyway, right? He's banking on the idea that he isn't going to be taking a fight anytime soon, just trying to get a macro advantage. But here comes a fight. The Gorger cores are in the area. The Cyclops frontlining is not necessarily what you want. The Shamans do deploy to get their healing out, and on the center of the stack here is a lot amount of the Goliaths taking damage, but the Shamans finally do get popped by the Hydras. That means that the sustain is much more reduced, right? There's only the one cleric. A little bit of a flubbed move out here from lucifirius, but he does recenter his forces, and I think he'll stay alive with a lot of the power behind it, right? He only lost 3 Goliaths, so he can move out, but there's a pretty entrenched position here for him to deal with at the third. The 2 circuits over here, I mean, there's a lot of units being, you know, now he's using all of this larva that he's made. He doesn't have any Lachezilisks, which would absolutely stop any push dead, but he's got enough static defense that I don't think the third can realistically be used here. The Goliaths are going to sort themselves towards the front. Lucifirius has a little bit of a bank here, and all of the Hydras here, they do reveal the Kagra on the ground over there. That's absolutely going to reveal to Lucy that his opponent does have a third. He can still take this fight, but a lot of his Goliaths are very wounded, and there's only the one Cleric to try to revive him. I think when he lost the Cyprian and the Cyclops, that prevented any crowd control from happening. Here's another one charging its way gallantly forth, but it will be pulled back. More forces gathering at the bridge. A bunch of idle workers gathering as well. And we do have another Vestry coming, and 3 Fulcrums. Count them. So the Gorger cores weren't super effective here, and Shambler doesn't seem too interested in taking up again, even though he does have a decent amount of resources banked right now. He's stretching ahead in terms of military count, getting a lot of that efficacy out of the fact that he does have a third base. And lucifirius is keeping up in terms of worker count, but not in terms of base count, right? So that's where a lot of this deficit is really going to start hurting him, because those are effective workers now that they're on a third base. I'd say a fairly vast army is being amassed over here, more units streaming in, mostly Hydras at this stage. And that's the kind of call that lucifirius needs to be aware of. He needs to realize, I need more crowd control and less Goliaths. But he's not realizing that just yet. So this attack force coming in from the left-hand side, the Goliaths can take an initial favorable move. There are a very vast number of them. But now the Hydras have pulled a little bit of attention away, and a couple of the Zorius are occupying a lot of shots. Some flanking Hydras from the right side. That's not going to be too significant, because the Cyprians are still focusing on the left-hand side here. All of the front line is gone, but the Cyprians are going to be focus-fired, which is the correct choice for sure. And there's still a stack of 19 Hydras firing upon these Goliaths. That's going to be a lot of the units that lucifirius had to spare. All of his clerics getting eaten up as well. He's down to just 1 military unit, which is indeed his cleric in the natural. And as soon as Lucy, the lack of third base is known, a 4th base on the way for Shambler, he can absolutely tech up pretty soon if he even needs to. I mean, he still has so many Hydras over here. 18 Hydras are going to storm the gates. There's an anchor being built, a couple of them, in fact, being assembled at the top of the ramp, but not really a whole lot of units in the area, right? The Mason's being pulled. He's actually losing a surprisingly small number of them so far, but they're going to start popping pretty soon. now being pulled away, back to home. Goliaths are going to be focused down next. Cyprians did get us some pretty good damage, but obviously the siege is on and the workers are dwindling. Now up by double the worker count, more than double. Shambler is establishing a very good case for himself here. He did not change his race. He is sticking with the Zerg way. Lucifirius is in trouble. Adding more Cyclops, realizing he needs that crowd control. Adding more Cyprians as well, not a bad shout either. But at this stage, he's got to lift his ministry, and I think it might even be too late with all the Hydras there. I think it will be focused down. Just barely does manage to get away, but there's the Cyprian is also, yeah, the Cyprian's in the anchor. Couldn't get focused down onto the Hydras there either. There's a lot of Cyclops, but a lot of their attention was spent on that Zor-Yusthaleth, so the damage fields weren't actually being made over at this stage. And yeah, I think Shambler doesn't even need to worry about microing this force, because back over here, his horde of Gorgorkors has arrived, and that's most likely going to be too damn much. I mean, there's only 10 workers left for Lucy. His economy is in shambles, and Shambler takes the first match. Well, that means Biddy will select the next map. Biddy must have been paying attention earlier. He knows that Shambler is not too fond of Nightfall. Maybe this is a good pick against the Shambler. Yeah. And typing is already occurring. Let's get it rolling. Lucifirius will be watching the stream, so he will not be in the game. And that's just fine, if that's what he likes to do. The Vine Green Zerg in the bottom right of Nightfall is Shambler. The electric blue Protoss in the top left is Biddy. You did try, Lucy. I would say you could have pulled the trigger a little bit sooner on your first attack, and Shambler didn't really have too much because he drolled up really hard. But here we go. Either way. He's talking about his grandfather, I believe. Pylon coming in for Biddy. Shambler up 1-0, looking to make it 2-0. He can go right back to eating food if he clears his group really quickly. I can agree with that, Overstar. The Terran absolutely needs to get some early damage dealt. And Lucifirius did try for that. Had the superior army for a large portion of that fight. And took some pretty good engagements, actually. But it was just too easy when Shambler got a fast third base and wasn't punished for it. That's where I think if you add some star pads, you can absolutely get pretty far. But that's for later. Yeah, against the Shambler, early game aggression is a pretty good name in the game, and just in that matchup in general, right? It's kind of like a swing sort of back and forth. It happens in stock StarCraft as well. You go through different variants, basically, of like, here's what's, good, and here's what's maybe not so good. Here's when I have the advantage, here's when my opponent does. And trying to set up for a contain of sorts would have helped you out. I mean, his force that was containing you earlier in that game was quite fraudulent. We'll see if the Shambler tries to do the same thing against Biddy. Because Mr. Bentabursky might be able to do something a little bit cheeky here. I mean, he's going to be going up against some Naths. He scouts the Quaseth. He sees the gas harvesters. He should be aware that that's a possibility. But he's training an Ecclesiast. Okay, the Ecclesiast is not bad. The Warden is coming. I feel like he'll have time to deal with this. At the same time, there is a Hatcherusk being put down. And the second pair of Nats... I mean, the first pair, they're chasing after the Scribe, which is being, you know, irritatingly tasked with a bunch of random orders. They're buying time. I think... did he even scout the... No, he did not see the Zealot, so this is pretty crucial because the Nats are going to have to turn around to try to defend. I mean, as soon as Ben actually uses it to attack workers, yeah. Here come the Nats. There should be at least one worker kill, but it looks like the Zealot is going to just be pathed around to buy more time. I mean, back at home, obviously we see the Warden being added. There is an Ecclesiast with another one on the way. There's not really a whole lot here, but the Nat... Micro is obviously stopping Shambler from tasking workers on again, and yeah, Biddybee's just being annoying right about now. Does bob and weave. He's not going to be able to get a kill, but you know, this is where if he had just decided to tough up the first couple shots, he could have killed a Droleth and then continued to do that run around, which I think would have served him pretty well. I'm not sure that he spotted the Hatcherosk being built there because of the way that the path works. I think he would have seen it, but I can't be 100% sure about that. A Lattice is being added in addition. And there was only the 4 Naths, right? Only 2 pairs. So more are not on the way. A Zorkis is coming behind this because of the Gateway Army. That's, you know, Shambler has a very deep understanding of the project by this point relative to some other people. So it really would not surprise me for him to kind of know all of the call and responses, so to speak. Like, this is at least like a good strategy overall. He doesn't end up suiciding for the one Scribe. Or, you know, trying to commit, I guess you could say, because it wouldn't have been... He might have not even lost a Nathricor for that. We do have some circuits being mutated over here. So this army is not liable to do too much damage. We do have some Legionnaires. They can jump on, or past even, with their high movement speed, and the Ecclesiasts can help keep them healthy. But I think when you have 2 circuits and the Naths, this is a pretty safe play. If you can bypass them, by all means, but I don't know that Biddybee will be able to do that. He's adding a second Warden for extra defense. He's getting Idols for splash, you know. In this particular case, he's even whittling down some of the Naths and confirming the position. When he sees the 2 circuits, I would like him to just hold here and wait for more reinforcements, wait for more units, try to establish some kind of contain and take a base behind it. But there are some Gorgacores out here as well, so that's what Shambler has been using his units for. And he only has the Ecclesiasts, right? He does do take some backing shots. Obviously, the Legionnaires could be moved into the base at this point because there's only the skits, or only the circuits, rather, blocking. And maybe he could have gotten a couple of additional focus fires onto those Naths, but, you know, at the same time, we'll have to wait and see what Biddybee wants to do. He's going for an expansion, adding some Dracodons behind this. A good choice versus the Gorgacor, as they do have some pretty good armor. So you'd like high damage for that in general. Macro Hatch, as well as a Spraith for safety. Looks like there's going to be a Spraith in both of the bases. Macro Hatch going up to 3 hatches total here for the Shambler. And then over here we have the Nexus, Misplaced, the Biddybee special. He did this a lot when he was first playing, actually. Moving his army further down to secure the natural. I think, yeah, depending on how deep it goes here, obviously Biddybee can just respond to this. I think he should be able to kill off one of these Gorgs. He doesn't have a Hierophant to slow them down. And he didn't really do the sort of stagger step that you would have liked to see there. Because I feel like if he came in underneath, Shambler would have maybe at least been a lot more heavily bruised for that effort. But as it currently stands, looks like the shields are just fine and will regenerate over time. And the macro hatch is complete. Back at home, we see some gas harvesting from the main. This Nexus is still a little ways off, and obviously our worker advantage is currently for the Zerg. He will be continuing to build more Gorgacores and more Nathricors. That's where his gas is going. Electing to stay on Tier 1 for the time being. And Biddybee is keeping up in worker production overall on the one base, so we might see this even out. More Gorgs are here. The Protoss units should back up here because the Dracodins will be eventually killed if not careful. Very, very good kiting here, and the Gorgorcores do end up getting evaporated. One more shot will do it. There it is. And there is even a Droleth burrowed there in a weird spot, which should be revealed if... yeah, there they go. Well, I guess he decided not to bother noticing it. There's a bunch more Gorgorcores, though, so this army is not the best of positions here. He's actually trying to fight inside of it, and the idols get detonated, so there goes all the splash. Well, he's going to move his units a little bit deeper. Some Quasilisks were made to conserve on gas since he was a little bit low. The Legionnaires can start to run roughshod over some of these workers, but their reign will be short-lived, surely. There's even a worker pull, so they're doing a little bit more damage than you might have expected. But despite that, there's going to be a little bit of a move out as 5 Quasis try to chase down a Dracodon. Can you believe it? An engram has been built at this base, though, so it's going to be a little bit harder for Shambler to siege than maybe he's expecting. It's also a very committed position here for BDB. He didn't use the resources that the engram is, requires in order to tech up or acquire any additional military, really. He's just going the same sort of strategy with idols and Dracodons. He could add some Hierophants. They're a little bit more gas-intensive, obviously. And that could definitely help with the diving in and out with the Gorgorcores, of course. But it's going to be Gorgorcore Quasilisk, it looks like. And the Wardens, it's just Wardens up here. The military does need to cycle back, and the Scribes do need to be pulled. So wisely they are. It looks like 3 of them will go down regardless. And yeah, none of the Gorgs ended up dying thus far. Some Pylons are going to be the next course of action, but looks like they will be reposted thanks to the idols. And I really don't think that the Quasilisks are going to get too much done versus the static defense and the natural. So at this stage, the Dracodons should probably stand right around here and just pivot up if they are needed. So responding in kind, but he'd be trying to keep himself in the game. That does shut down his mining for a little bit, and a 3rd base has been completed by the Shambler. So once again, going for that fast move and enjoying the fact that he's pressuring his opponent. I think what we've seen out of this game is a general growth in the strategic understanding of what each player and each race is capable of, and some good reactions from both of the players. But Shambler is demonstrating a better macro grasp. So this is where we're probably going to end up seeing him take the game, judging by the early stages. BDB definitely had some early options, potentially, but it wasn't going to be enough, it seems. He's just going to go ahead and focus up on the defenses here. Dracodons are starting to trickle out. There is no engram in this area, so it's going to be a lot harder for this base to remain, the main here for BDB to remain safe in the wake of all these Gorgs. Meanwhile, we do have the Iral Iris on the way, so that is going to be a very critical point. Only 3 hatches, though. I mean, if you count this one, of course, it is 4. So as he drolls up into his base, he should eventually have more larvae for worker production and unit production. But the BDB force is being, pushed out. There's a lot of Zeths, a lot of Zorius. I would say that the main damage dealers of this group are absolutely still going to be the Gorgorcores. So you really want to watch out for that in this particular engagement that is forthcoming. Idols are going to start shredding the front line here. The Dracodons are grouped up quite a bit, and the Gorgorcores simply fly over. Now some staggering is happening, but I think all the splash from the Gorgs is going to be more than enough. Ecclesiasts are keeping some of the units alive for a little bit longer than they would otherwise. And that idol is not going to be long for this world. So there is no more splash damage coming out from the military. Despite that, we see, looks like 2 Gorgorcores did end up falling. And the Ecclesiasts are not long for this world either. The engram will zone out the rest. And it doesn't look like Shambler is certain about whether or not he can go back into the main. There was an engram placed over here, as well as a grand library, a Stargate, and another gateway. So BDB is going to go ahead and spend his money, but back at home we already have, Tier 2 completed. We are going to be adding a Mutat Spire to the mix, so it does feel like Shambler is still in decisive control, despite having a lot of idle workers, and perhaps you could say a military disadvantage. At least in terms of raw strength. An Ardent Authority on the way as well. So a real menagerie of particular units coming out here. We have Amaranths from the Grand Library that can also give way to a Cantavis later. He's getting Panoptises to help bully the Gorgorcores, of course. Which is not a bad shout. I mean, you could also go for a land effect, but they want to be on top of your units, so the land effect might not be as useful. Adding some zealots to help cleave through the front. And the Ardent Authority is here, of course. So that will most likely be an architect. But maybe I'm wrong. What does he want? Getting positrons is not a bad shout. That's also pretty good splash. I was thinking architect to try to take more distant fights, because you have got the zealots to help peel for you now. No more ecclesiasts to keep your units healthy. And we are going to see some Lyrilisks. This is the first time I've seen the Kalkir Pond in one of these games, I believe. Although, maybe that's not quite true, because I think Nabli might have gone Calculisks later on at some point. Gorgakor is happily taking some of those pot shots there, scouting out information, sees the third base on the way. A fourth is the response for Shambler, and a fifth. So some mutas have already been trained as well. We are definitely going to see an explosion of Tier 2 units come out the way for Shambler. He could mutate even more of these Quasis into Lyrilisks if he really wanted to. An engram at the front is not a bad shout at all for the various splash. Adding another Warden even to protect against flyovers. We have Atreus and Positrons continuing to be trained. They need to be brought to the front lines as soon as possible. And a worker transfer is starting over here, or worker creation is starting over there. There's a whole host of mutas, but that's not really the best of choices against positrons and engrams. So there's still a chance that BDB holds, but this engram is not going to be given time to finish, I don't think, before the army starts to make its way over here. Here comes the pincer from the mutas and the Gorgs. I think the Dracodins are pretty much all but dead, but the positrons are here. They will indeed do some splash damage to the Gorgs, as well as the Atreus, of course. In fact, all the Gorgs are pretty much dead, but the engram only got a couple of shots off, and that's going to be the third base going down, as well as most of the technology there. Only one engram in the natural. A very crushing blow there, with most of the units staying alive here for Shambler. Lost a Muta and maybe 2 Gorgs. Panoptises are out, but they are making a desperate flyover, and the Mutas even pick one off on the way out. So that was a little bit awkward here for Biddy B. He doesn't have anything to peel for his engram. First couple of its shots ended up going directly onto Zorius. Not the target you wanted them. Positron kiting backwards. It's one shot away from death, but does end up getting backwards and benefiting from shield regen. The Nexus at the natural is getting ransacked, as well as the worker count. I don't think we're going to be seeing Biddy B in this game for too much longer. There's up to 5 bases potentially being mined here from Shambler. His 5th one is not yet being used, but that's going to be enough. I mean, as soon as you see this as Biddy B, you know Shambler probably is up to 4 bases, at minimum 3, and that's just his next one in the line. So GG is called, and Biddy B concedes a match. Lucifirius will now select the next map, while I update the leaderboard. Unfortunately, he cannot select mainstream. I even gave him the ping on top of it. He has elected to fight Shambler on Boskevine. That is ballsy. Is he going to make a statement here? This could be the time that Shambler gets defeated on his home map. I think we can oblige him. I think we can give him a chief caca penis in chat. Let's get it on. Boskevine. Shambler has not lost a tournament match on Boskevine. Will this change? This is probably the last time you'll see the map. Not exactly guaranteed, but probably. Lucifirius, the Emerald Terran, in the bottom left-hand corner. The Zinwaldite Brown is the Shambler. He is Zerg in the top right. Getting my wires crossed here. It has been a lot of casts, a lot of games. The Shambler does say that Lucifirius is a brave man, and it's true. It's true, damn it. Now, Lucifirius is not harvesting anything other than minerals right now. He's queuing up a decent number of masons and is starting to harvest gas now. What is the Shambler gonna do in response? Looks like a Hydrith versus Terran. Okay. He likes Quaseth versus Protoss and Hydrith versus Terran. That's what we've gathered so far. One more gas return and his Hydrith will be on the way. Meanwhile, Lucifirius is indeed going to scout this time. Okay, he's actually channeling a lot of gas right now. I'm interested in seeing what Lucifirius does here. He can go for a Fulcrum, but is he just going to go mass Starpad or what? What's his play? He doesn't have anything started already. Is it a proxy? No, it's going to be a Starpad right in front of Shambler's Scout. What can possibly be done here? Now, he could also proxy another Starpad over in this location, or somewhere else in general. And that could be pretty effective. This is not the best choice to use multiple workers there, but... Oh, he does tickle him. He's now chasing him with 3 workers. Surely you could put 2 of these guys on minerals. This is a lot of efficaciousness. A lot of efficiency, you could say. Lost mining time. Lost brain cells. Oh, he does scout that there are some eggs coming. With the Hydrith opener, he should add a Watchdog. His first unit will be a Wraith, of course. What is he going to add alongside this? Another Starpad. Yes, okay. It's going to be Mass Wraith out of... Yeah, okay, Shambler was really concerned about a proxy, which makes sense given the circumstances. It's going to be Mass Wraith. No Watchdog just yet. Shambler going for an expansion. That could give Lucifirius the opener that he needs. A Spraith is on the way. That counters the Wraith, of course. Right now he's just going to go ahead and use the Wraith for scouting. The Skither Cores are just madly inquiring around the map. Very inquisitive. Not 100% sure what his opponent is doing. Would he really just build nothing but a Starpad? And at this point, that is going to delay them long enough for the Watchdog to do some pretty good damage, right? And he's going to start tickling just to announce his presence. We did see a Tizat there for a moment. Hacharovsky is on the way here for Shambler. Getting a natural in order. But I think he can get a critical mass of Wraiths and maybe do his best to attack the Hacharovsk. And, you know, the Skits are down here. They're not going to do too much given the Watchdog positioning. Covers almost everything. The one Hydra is here. It can be attacked. It is possible. Once you get to 9 Wraiths, you start one-shotting Hydras. I think. Oh, they have 1 armor, so I guess you'd need 10 Wraiths. But it's pretty close. I think Terran is probably the most XD race. Terran is thus the favorite. Doing a little sortie, showing off his flyboy moves. 6 Wraiths now being dispatched. It has admittedly forced out a lot of, you know, larvae turning into military units and workers turning into static defense that wouldn't normally be there. So that's kind of interesting, right? But there's still plenty of military over here. Shambler does catch wind of that. Oh, he could actually finish. Oh, he even finishes that one off. So if that's going to be another one, that could be pretty big. Once the spray finishes, there's a lot more armor. So well, he kills it, but it's at the cost of 3 wraiths, and it can just be remutated. So not the best choice of target selection there. And lucifirius is floating a lot of money back at home. He could add 2 more star pads and continue producing wraiths nonstop. But it looks like he's going to go for an expansion instead. Now this is interesting, right? Because you could conceivably go Stockade Vestry into Shaman to heal up your wraiths if you wanted to go all wraith, right? Like it's a silly idea because it can be countered. And you saw how ineffective they were at dealing with Spraits, but that was at a count of 6, with other military units attacking them. If not for those other military units, that definitely would have gone a different way. There is an Aboleth here for detection. We have another one being postured over there. And Shambler is only now starting to catch up in workers. He'll have access to more gas spending, obviously. But, you know, with more wraiths, I absolutely think that... He's at that point where he can start one-shotting Hydras because he's about to get 11 Wraiths. One of them is going to be sent off here. It won't spot these Hydras moving out, and obviously there's no hope of doing any damage, but he can maybe camp a 3rd base here. He's actually scouting all of the different expansions on the map. And one of those Skither cores is already about to fall. So, a little bit of poor reactions there from Lucy. But again, he has 9... That's 1 away from being able to one-shot. Yeah, he can absolutely clean this up. So he's focusing down the Hydras, which is fine. And he trades, what, 5 Hydras for 3 Wraiths, I think? 4 Wraiths, if you count this one. Yeah, 5 Hydras, 2 Skits for 4 Wraiths and a Mason. And he keeps tabs on his opponent, whether or not he's going up to a 3rd base, which currently is not going to happen. 8 Wraiths with 2 more on the way. I still think lucifirius should add, 4 more star pads at this point. What's he going to be going for? He's actually waiting to tech up, interestingly enough. He's gone Mass Wraith into Tier 2. I honestly think we could see interesting plays out of people if they wanted to do stuff like this. Going for the gas, he could transfer a bunch of his mineral workers down here and saturate the geyser in the ridge instantaneously. That absolutely could be a play. And he's, once again, up to 10 Wraiths, right? 10 Wraiths, the number you need to start one-shotting Hydras, as we discussed earlier. I don't know that Shambler can realistically fight against that. Not with this particular composition. If he added Izira cores, that starts to scale a lot better. The bounce attack, the extra armor, the extra HP. You start needing way more Wraiths to start one-shotting those things. So just more scouts, occupying every single possible expansion that Shambler might go for. Interesting watchdog positioning as well. Not exactly what you would expect, but be that as it may, there's still plenty more going on. Reinforcement Spraiths is realizing his opponent is really genuinely going all in on that. Now, this Wraith is on patrol path, so it will get caught out over here. He's going to need to pull his Wraith back. He does see that his opponent is trying to take an expansion. This is the time to strike before the Spraiths get involved. You can absolutely send a whole host of Wraiths in that general direction. Your Atlas is about to be done, so we'll see what lucifirius wants to do now that he's teching up. He is taking a 3rd base at around the same time that his opponent is. But with these Nats on the way, they can absolutely pick off the Watchdog. They'll also scout out that there's a fast Tier 2. But there's also plenty of Wraiths in this general area. Is adding Sentinels for the anti-ground. Adding more Wraiths. Actually adding an Anseal. Only one of his star pads currently being produced. The 8 Nathricors are going to be on their way. And I think once those get popped by the Wraiths, he could absolutely be in a pretty good spot here. He needs to turn his Wraiths around, though. Not going to be repairing the Watchdog despite all of the opportunity that he was given. And the Wraiths will just absolutely eviscerate that. There's so many. There's 16 Wraiths. And more should be on the way. An Anseal here for detection. Mostly also for protection. Capping his geyser, so he's really interested in getting a lot of gas. He might just go straight to 2.5 and start adding starports with the add-ons. Maybe going into Sundogs behind this. It's almost like a challenge build, but it's working. So far it is providing some value. There's only 6 Hydras over here, so they're pretty much going to be dead. Honestly, I think meme magic is upon us, boys. We do have 4 Izira cores, 5th one over here at the natural, but the 3rd is being demolished. And yeah, Shambler just didn't set up anything. He's quite shocked. He can't believe it. He did scout the Atlas. So here come the push. Not really a whole lot of protection over here, but The Azira cores need to be scrambled down here. There's only the one Spraith left over. It will also be focused down. And, well, okay, never mind. There's more on the way. Ant-seals are trying to defend. More Spraiths are mutating. These units are still not being used by Shambler. I think he's just very flabbergasted by the fact that he's being killed to death by Wraiths. He's going to go ahead and burrow, but there is an Ant-seal here for detection, so that's obviously not going to be too useful. But yeah, we're seeing the weakness of lucifirius' play here because he's not actually focus firing the Kagrans, and he's just sitting there and taking the damage, right? Adding the Fountainhead now, so it is going to be... it is indeed, I think, going to be the star pads. He doesn't have that much gas. He did finish his cap in the main. He also finished it in the natural, but he's only mining with 2 workers. So that's probably the main thing. He's mining with 2 workers over here as well. He's not aware, I think, that you need 3 workers for full saturation. He does have more wraiths, but it's actually less than he attacked with to begin with, and he needs to respond to this attack force, right? He needs to pull back. A lot of Quasis getting a lot of kills thanks to their hit scan attack. Only the one Sentinel, this should instantaneously be reinforced with all the minerals that he has in the bank. He can absolutely do something crazy with this. Adding stockades instead. I think he might recognize what is being said in the chat, actually, that he does need some kind of defense, some kind of healing for sustain. He's going to move the Sentinel up, but his third base is actually going to be under attack sooner rather than later. Stockades are a little bit slow. He could obviously pump out a lot of Mavericks to try to contend with this, but 29 Quasis, you're not really going to be able to defeat that with just Wraiths. You need some heavier firepower. The Fountainhead is done. What do we see in addition, right? What is he going to use that tier 2.5 for? He's going to go ahead and cancel a bunch of stuff and lift off, so obviously the armor of the Stockade and the Ministry make it really difficult for particularly Quasilisks to do much damage here. He's going to scramble the Wraiths. His Sentinels are being completed, so that's obviously pretty good. I'm not sure that it's going to be enough exactly. He definitely needs to add more units and structures. He's adding 2 more Sentinels in the meantime, and obviously Shambler can just run down here and ignore the Sentinels up here for now. But back at home, he's really not using the Fountainhead, right? He hasn't actually used tier 2 for anything yet, besides the Sentinels. And the 2.5 is also similarly unused. So he's landed the Stockade. He now has 3 of them. We'll have to wait and see what he plans to do with them. And Shambler, on the other hand, is nearly completed his tier 2, getting a 3rd. This is inspiring. Terran mains everywhere. More Ant-seals on the way. Interesting. And it's going to be mantles for walkers. So we might see Cataphracts or maybe Mass Ramses with his mineral income. He did save the Ministry, so he can absolutely do some more work with that. But it looks like right now he just wants to land it. Or he's actually maybe going to repair it. I'm not 100% sure what he's moving it for. But this ball of military is not going to find much success over here against all the Sentinels. There's even all of these Ant-seals to really block a lot of the damage potential out of stuff like this. The 3rd base has actually been set up and guarded now, and a 4th is on the way for Shambler. So he's got a Quasilisk burrowed over there to prevent... well, it's not going to prevent the landing or the building, but it'll at least alert him. And yeah, at this point the Ministry is going to land over here, and the Quasilisk will see that, so... So Masons are going to be confirming that position, perhaps? I think he might have actually escaped, if not for his movement. But here come the Sentinels as well. This stack of Ant-seals is really going to prove to be a headache, I think, for what Shambler is up against. Adding Cyprians to the mix, Mavericks to the mix, and Ramses, indeed. He's going to add some Durandals. Those are obviously quite effective. I mean, looking at the composition here, I don't really know what Shambler is planning. He does have his back to the swamp, but what is he going to use it for, right? He's only now making some Hydras to add into the mix, turn them into Bactylisks, but it's going to be a while. Adding a Lodestone was actually going to reveal that detected Quasilisk, which is pretty funny. Shambler only now maybe paying attention to that. I think I saw his camera pan over there. No Sentinels are lifted off and moved over, so he's not really going to be able to defend that force, but he can poke out at any point. He is adding some more units. He's keeping his money much lower than it was. Adding more and more Wraiths. The Ant-seals are going to be big as well, even adding some Cataphracts in the queues. So at this point, I do think he needs to set up some more stuff. Obviously, he needs to try to defend this base. The impending attack is on the way. I'm not sure that he even spotted the burrow mound. It can be a little bit difficult to see, but I think that was him selecting it. So it's not really going to be any surprise that the... yeah. Not quite going to be a surprise that that's dead. And didn't get self-destructed either. So the army is instead moving out. The Wraiths alone with the Enseal support could probably help with this. Ministry is going to be sacrificed. And the Mason down in the bottom was indeed focused down there, so he can't easily set it up again. But the military is on the way, right? So this is absolutely still going to be dangerous here for Shambler. He doesn't have that many Bactylisks, right? He's only now mutating 6 of them. I guess he does have a couple over here, right? He has 5. And they do indeed have the cliff advantage. Unfortunately, a lot of his wraiths kind of just like flew in here and flailed about for a little bit. But here come the Durandals to light everything on fire. And the Enseal's continuing to try to protect them. The Spraiths are draining a lot of their energy thanks to all the bounces, but he does have to pull the workers, and his military is down here getting chewed up by all of the reinforcement Mavericks. If this Durandal gets dragged into the fight as well, that could absolutely help, and indeed it does. The big mech force is over here, crushing a lot of the Zerg. The Bactylisks now trying to make themselves known, and the Enseal's still continuing to shield stuff, but I'm not sure it's going to be exactly enough. The Hatrosk has finally fallen, and this is going to mean that the seeing Mavericks force Bactylisks back is just so shocking to me. I'm very surprised to see that. The Enseals need to try to protect them. The Ramses need to maybe engage onto them. But it doesn't look like lucifirius is micromanaging too much. He's back at home letting his army fight for themselves. Fend for themselves, perhaps. And, I mean, he has built up a large force of Cataphracts, Ramses, Hurricanes, but the big stack here that was super expensive was the Enseals, and they have indeed fallen. Bactylisks just running absolute roughshod. Shambler doesn't realize that his opponent also has to macro. But losing the third base does sting. Unfortunately for him, in the backdrop of that, there was there were some casualties there. Looks like that might have been another Durandal, considering the fire. I do appreciate that Shambler is sticking around and trying to take that base again for the extra gas. We should finally see some Lakizilisks at some point, thanks to his Zorkis, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. Ahmed charges forth and does give his life for the cause, but yeah, the ambient damage here is going to be a little bit too high. Losing a couple of Bactylisks on the approach. He is going to go ahead and kill that. Ahmed and Durandal trying to charge forth. There's no Anseal support, so this attack force is a little bit weaker than it could be. And you can see here it's a little bit discombobulated. The Bactylisks now having to come back over in this direction. The Anseal losing its energy and shields. And look at this, a huge force coming in to try to shred the armor. Durandals have 4 armor, so they take a very long amount of time to die in this context, but the Cataphract also, with 3 armor itself, is not too shabby in that respect, but will eventually be brought down by the massive number of 15 Bactylisks. We probably need to see more mantles be added, but for that he's going to need more economy. And right now, that's not really something that he has, only getting his third base reset up once again. The Bactylisks, thanks to the resources that Shambler has in his disposal, thanks to his third base being up and running for so long, is definitely going to stretch out ahead. And I do feel like, honestly, lucifirius, if he had spent his money earlier before his Atlas had gone down or after his Atlas was entering production, he absolutely could have taken this game. He might still, like, it's not technically over. He can start to take a 4th base and maybe try to hold, but it just feels like it's really going to be quite difficult for him to fight the Bactylisk army here, especially with the Captain Drolla. The Cataphracts are here. That absolutely could play a part in this, but yeah, at this stage, even with only 2 armor instead of 3, it feels like there's just too much. Ahmed could try to charge in, and he will, but I'm not sure he's going to get anywhere and connect on anything just yet. And yeah, the Cataphracts are being chewed up. I mean, still, this force is being piecemealed, right? But there's not really that many other units here, and the Sentinels weren't floated over to try to defend this base. The Treasury will end up getting popped and presumably canceled. More Ahmeds are taking a walk over to the front line there. Saturating is 4th. It's not currently under duress or even investigation here. Shambler only now setting up his 4th. Well, I guess this is his 3rd, right? He was trying to set up a 4th. So they're on even basis for now, but there's a mass of Gorgorkors and only 2 Watchdogs defending this. I don't think this attack is going to be expected. Watchdogs are attacking different targets again. Masons are now under attack. Ramses are here to try to do some more damage. Masons are being eaten up. At this point, I don't think the worker count matters too much over here. He just needs to fully saturate his gas again, and you know the depleted minerals and stuff like that are not too significant. Ramses are going to come up here to try to do a little bit more damage, but they're not actually going to penetrate the Gorgorcore armor, so their kinetic pen is not going off. Still, their single target damage is respectable compared to the average kind of unit, and here comes some Cyprians to add a little bit more mustard to this hot dog. There it all blows up. Mysterious meat rains from the sky, and all of these idle workers are none the wiser. Really trying to maximize his gas income. Can't quite afford tier 3, obviously. On the flip side, lucifirius has a lot of gas. He has 3 workers on that one. Still only 2 on this. I feel like that also kind of told him that he sold himself down the river there a little bit by only having 2 workers harvest gas from multiple bases, and now he's hemorrhaging even more to the Gorgorcores on the right-hand side. So once again, this base is not really going to be long for this world, and he just doesn't have the firepower to bring it down. I mean, there's so many Zorias and Bactyls, he could absolutely run over this base as well. Okay, the Ministry is being focused down here by Shambler. It's not being repaired. Instead, watchdogs are being set up. If he loses this Ministry, which he will, that's just going to be heartbreaking, right? He didn't repair it. He had 2 Masons right there, but they were building watchdogs instead. So what do you do in this situation? He's just going to drop a treasury this time, which is more susceptible to being sniped, but he doesn't have the money to spend on another Ministry, not at this stage. Especially with cataphracts eating into his budget quite heavily. 300 minerals a pop for those guys. And there's another base being set up here. 5 fully saturated bases for the Shambler, or as close to full saturation as is necessary. Just that alone is going to be enough, and I mean, Hurricanes are going to help to, you know, these Zorislots aren't going to be able to block all the shots, and they're kind of getting chewed up a little bit, but the Gorgorcores are here to attack the cataphracts, occupy a lot of their shots. Ramses and Cyprians coming in from the right-hand side, but all of the Hurricanes are gone, so the armor pen is also gone with them. However, it's only the Bactylisks now, so maybe it'll still be enough to hold in this particular context. I think maybe just barely. But this is still on a bit of a razor's edge. Shambler just says, fuck it, I'm going to go back in and try to, you know, melt the military at the very least. And the Cataphract's even going to die to the bounces. Some more units coming, including a Durandal. Again, great armor versus the Bactylisks, but it will eventually fall to the concentrated fire. In fact, if more of those Cataphracts had been Durandals, I feel like he would have been able to deal with the ground army a lot easier, but obviously the Gorgorcores were a big concern, and he didn't really have any Goliaths or anything like that. Funnily enough, he didn't build a single Fulcrum this game, and that's exactly what you would want in this context. Thankfully, the other Wraith fell out of vision and thus could not be bounced, but there's so many more units coming. Vorvercores, a Vilgoricor, some Zorius, some Zeths, and another round of Gorgorcores that are just going to pummel their way through into the space. There's 5 Watchdogs now, but it's still not going to be enough to deal with, what is this, 10 Gorgorcores? So, yeah. I mean, maybe Shambler will make a mistake on the move or something, and that will offer a little bit more, but as it currently stands, I'm not so convinced. This base has been set up again, now has anti-air defenses, but the Zeth-Vorv combo is just going to deal a lot of damage to that. In fact, these top 2 Watchdogs are not even going to be involved in the fight, and I think Lucy might even GG before he really does too much more than this, because he's losing even more Masons and trying to add some more Wraiths to the front there. I mean, the Gorgorcores are dying. The Shambler could have pulled the trigger on this attack on the right-hand side a lot sooner, because he presumably knows that his opponent is going to try to retake that base. And there's even more Gorgorcores waiting to roll back in here. No gas being harvested. No minerals really to speak of. That might just trigger the GG, but instead he's actually going to make a go of it. He's going to try to defend himself. There's admittedly only like the couple of Bactyls and stuff that are in here, but only Wraiths. They're not going to be the ones to deal with that. And here comes the surround on the first group of units. They get chewed up quite easily, pulling back. The treasury has gone kaput. And now the Cyprians are hopelessly slowed and, you know, just pierced apart. Writing is on the wall. Shambler looking pretty good to go up 3-0 and face Biddy B once again. But Lucifirius, man, what a show he put on. The Mass Wraith strategy very well could have claimed victory there. That was pretty solid. Shambler just had no idea. I think in retrospect, if he had built Izira cores sooner, or maybe just gone for some sort of mass Zethra attack or something like that into the base, like there's counterplay to it. But and Lucifirius could have also played better, built more Wraiths, etc. But Shambler, I think mostly, he just wasn't aware of it. He didn't even know it was a thing. So Lucifirius is helping to define more interesting strategies that can be done. And I have to hand it to him. You know, that was pretty solid. Right, yeah. When he kills the third the first time as it's being set up and, you know, before it really even gets any workers or defenses, absolutely could have taken the Shambler there if he had focused down the attack. And he went back home to macro up because that's what you have to do, right? You have to macro. You've got to send more units in that way. And that has to happen. But it was like the exact wrong time to do it because that's when Shambler started to mount a more focused defense. So it was interesting. It is absolutely a game that was winnable. We'll have to see how Lucifirius fares against Biddy B. But first, Biddy B will have to see how he fares against Shambler in this match on Otherworld. Shambler will be the Snow Zerg in the top right. Biddy B is the orange Protoss in the bottom right. Now, in the last game, I think the Shambler endured purely because his opponent had a decent float. Right, we talked earlier about how if Lucifirius had dropped 2 or 3 extra star pads and was producing 5 Wraiths at a time, he would have won before the Atlas even went down. But will Shambler allow somebody like Biddy B, who was watching that last match, to get the better of him again? Looks like he's going to be going the Quaz opener once more. So that's kind of interesting. He seems to like that better than Hydrith against Protoss specifically. We'll have to pick his brains about that at a later point. The Wraiths are power. Quazeth pool coming. Workers will meet in the middle, just about. Slight advantage to Biddy B on the scout timing. They wiggle against each other. Tip their fedoras. Good day, sir. Or maybe the scribe is a woman. Do you guys think the scribe would be more likely to be female, or would it be the Droleth? I wonder. Sure, somebody can answer this question if I go to deviantart.com/proxy. Not sure yet. We'll keep an eye on that. Dracodon first. I think Shambler just decides to do that a lot. That's kind of interesting. Now, that scribe showing could be suspicious, but it doesn't look like Shambler took notice. Dracodon followed by an Ecclesiast. No pylon just yet. And it looks like it's going to be the in-base. That's going to be the destination here for Shambler. Still nothing from that scribe. Ah, look, the Dracodon found the Droleth. Brutal. Naths have not left the building just yet. Waiting for a second pair, it looks like. And a third has started. Wow. Yeah, I think his gateway has vision of the Droleth there, so he probably took notice of that. It's good play, heads-up play from Biddy B. Now, the 4 Naths here could absolutely be an interesting move. Will they turn around and try to kill the Scribe is the question, because he absolutely should have seen that. But it looks like instead he's just going to keep it going. Like, if I'm against Biddy B and I see his Scribe randomly in my base, I'm absolutely thinking there's going to be shenanigans afoot. Another Drakiden here. With the Ecclesiast, I feel like there's... Well, this Drakiden is actually not going to have an automatic shoot. So that's kind of a little bit of a problem here. That first Drakiden is going to get attacked because it's on a move command following the... It's following the Scribe. It's still on a move command on the Scribe. He's still not attacking with it. Okay, finally fixes it. That could have been much worse for Shambler. He could have lost way more Naths. Instead only loses a pair, which is exactly the same cost as an Ecclesiast. So they traded evenly. An idol on the way, so preemptive when he scouted the Quasith pool. He kind of knew. And there's not really that many military units here. There's a lot of Droleths. I still feel like, you know, there's potential here for Shambler to get run over. He has to, you know, chase down the wounded Drakiden. The other one taking good pot shots the whole time. Trying to, you know, sort of decouple itself. And now this one falling back. This is why you wanted to keep that Ecclesiast alive, obviously, because this Drakiden is... If these units came to fight with it, the Drakiden would actually stay alive, but in this particular case, it just wasn't going to be enough. So that's much more expensive. Biddy B now in a bit of a hole. And it's just Droleths, though. Like, he's got 4 Naths back at home. Zorkas could be scouted here by the Scribe that was left in the base. Naths are now returning home. So it doesn't look like there's going to be any further pressure. Not interested in fighting the idols, I think. Adding a Warden for back at home, you know, buy you a little bit of time. But absolutely should update the rallies to the choke here of Shambler, if Biddy B wants to go for something like this. And look at this! Shambler going for another Hacharosk. This could be the magic timing where if he doesn't cancel that, you know, it can absolutely be tickled. He's going to try to save it, actually, with all of his Naths, but you can see they're taking so much damage from the idols, and they're not even going to get a single kill, it doesn't look like. Oh, they will. They will get one. Now, the idol projectile is not fire, and it's not tracking, right? So, in this particular case... oh, man, if he kept that other idol alive, it absolutely would have worked wonders here. It does end up canceling the circuit. Just the one pair of quasis, with more hatching on the way, but... And now we have the pylon started. This could be where things could get very, very tricky. Now, his idol does go down. If I'm Biddy B here, I try to focus down the Nathricor, specifically so that I can not worry about air units. It's like the last air unit that I know Shambler has. So he absolutely should be like taking moving shots with it. It's pretty much condemned anyway. You might as well get a little bit of damage dealt. Another Ecclesiast being started. Not superb against the... Oh, he even gets the Nathricor on the way out. Okay, not superb against Quas, but I don't think that Shambler wants to attack here. So this is a little bit of a misread in the situation. Now, he does say cheeky fuck, so he saw the pylon. But it's still worth it for the distraction. When he sees the army going all the way back to fight that, he should move out and take more map control, more map presence. Will he know to do that? Will he have the heads up? Because he's now going to be behind multiple bases. He didn't cancel the Hacharosk. So what does Biddy B do? Adding more gates? Okay, looks like maybe he wants to add front line later on into this fight. He has a lot of minerals. He knows he needs to spend that. Going for a Grand Library. Okay, well, adding more Ecclesiasts for now, looks like. Not going to have too much gas bank. And again, he's not really updating his rally point. I'm a little bit concerned that the military is just going to stay back at home when he could be using it, at least like walking halfway across the map or something like that. A little bit of a split up over the new lava lake, and not very great micro here for Biddy B. A very slow reaction. One of his Drakidens has stutter stepped backwards because it was in the same control group, and he grabbed them all. But he trades a lot of quas for one idol, so it's still a favorable trade, but he actually could have kept that idol alive. A couple Gorgakors are out, but Drakidens in great number, so I feel like that's not going to be enough here. And that Kagran will be under attack. Yeah, it's just going to end up getting kaput here. Killing a couple of workers is not a bad shout. He's actually, you know, once again, Biddy B has stayed within the margin of error for workers. Now, the Quasis did their job by holding off this force and forcing them into a bit of a corner, and now the Lakizalisk is burrowed. You don't really want to fall back into a corner versus this army, I feel like, but Lakizalisk is getting a lot of free shots. Drakidens can still at least pick off these Gorgs while they're here. But you can see that the Luciferius are here, and that's going to chew up a lot of the rest of these forces. So he's not really going to have too much there. He does have an Atreus coming. I think he was expecting a more hard committal into air, but instead it's going to be the surprising Luciferius. This Kagran colony will be focused down before it can finish mutating. So that's actually a pretty heads-up play here for BDB because... Oh, or not, because it lived with 2 HP. He's just trying to be a bit of a nuisance here, but I think he's draining his own APM to a point where he's not really macroing back at home. He does have more units on the way. He can absolutely come in here and target this base. So, yeah, he's forced like a response where all the Luciferius are moving out of position. He can try to snipe some of these down, or at least force them to burrow. The Zealots are on top of one of them. They reveal one, they reveal the next. Units are kind of getting caught on each other because they're not really being microed forward, and the Zealots are going to go ahead and reveal... No, they're not going to bother targeting that. The Ecclesias needs to move out of the line of fire here because it will end up getting melted. But there go all of the Luciferius. Zealots are going to be absolutely money against these Quas due to their armor. Here comes some Zeths, so they are going to help clean this up quite well. I thought maybe he could have just gone for the Circuit here and then postured to attack the Luciferius, but this is a very back-and-forth match. This round is going to be attempted here. Pretty good shots around that first Dracodon, so it looks like that one will at least be claimed. And in fact, the other one is making it a little bit easy to surround. Now should be pulled back. It's not going to happen. The Atreus is going to charge forward. So these Zets are now going to be popped. There are some Gorgs. Not really. There's only the one Atreus for anti-air. I actually feel like that's a really big mistake here. A Stargate being added, but it's a little bit too late considering the 3 Gorgs here, right? The Zealots will not be long for this world. They're actually going to be targeted on top of the Circuit, and the Atreus is just going to be the one to be targeted by the Gorgakor. A whole horde of Quasis is being made here, and that Kagran is just simply remorphing. And here come even more Gorgs. So a whole host of Quas. Yeah, the horde is coming. Absolutely. And now BDB is expanding, but it's, I think, a little bit too late. I mean, there's just way more resource nodes available that even though the worker difference isn't that significant, you're still talking about, you know, having access to way more gas, right? You've got access to ridges, which maybe only now we're saturated. I'm not 100% sure about that. Obviously, you've got access to this geyser down here. So it feels like I think Shambler is... I think Shambler is going to run away with this fairly soon, right? There's a couple of Wardens, well placed. Stargate not yet blinking. Atreus nearly completed from the Grand Library. Some distance mining happening. Nexus is about halfway done. But it just feels like Shambler can overpower him. He's got 5 Gorgs. Atreus's, especially if they move away from the location. There's some Dracodons coming, or at least a Dracodon. Okay, so maybe I spoke a little bit too soon. The Atreises are obviously going to be the main interest, you know, target of interest here. The Idol also firing some shots. So that's going to stop that from happening. But yeah, I don't think the Quasis are going to be the main target here. He canceled the Nexus versus Quasilisks when it was almost complete. I think that might just seal the deal. I mean, BDB was already kind of behind, but canceling his expansion in that critical moment is a huge oof. I mean, admittedly, Shambler has just been producing a lot of units, but yeah, his anti-air is now under attack. BDB is losing his Idol. He's going to lose the Atreises up next. I mean, a lot of these Gorgs are very, very softened, but you need that splash damage, right? And I don't know. The Dracodon's already dead, or is it? Did it even... Where is the Dracodon? It's in the mineral line, kind of spinning around a little bit. Another Panoptus on the way. A pretty good unit, but now the Zealots are going to get cleaned up surely. Oh, Shambler doesn't seem to notice them. So never mind that. I think if enough Zealots get added to the list here with no Luciferius back at home, they could just go on a counterattack of their own. But the problem is that there's just not enough guaranteed anti-air. Maybe if the Panoptus fleet gets big enough, we might be able to see something there. Going to be Naths as well as the Gorgs. His only source of AoE at this stage is the Atreus. He is getting a land effect, which isn't a bad shout either. Not just for the disable, but also versus Naths. I mean, they stack up very, very well. Really needs to make sure he holds on to this Nexus, and he is looking to expand down to the bottom left, it looks like. So already has his eyes on a larger macro game. Here comes the Horde, of course. The first loss is already confirmed with the Panoptus. Then there's the land effect doing quite a bit of damage. Oh no, the workers though, they're getting clumped up together. a huge amount, a massacre of workers, dropping down to 10 workers almost instantaneously. The Atreus is not really sounding off shots during this whole process. The Land Effect does deal some damage, right? We have a very minimal number of Nathricors left, and he needs to activate that Land Effect, but it's not going to happen in time. And just looking at the worker count, I mean, it's even less now. He's single-digit workers versus the 71 of Shambler. This is not looking too hot, boys. That one Atreus fought bravely. That one Dracodon. No, those 3 Dracodons. They're fighting bravely. And they do win the 3v3. Zealots are going to charge forward, but they're going to be met by a horde of Quasis, which will eventually bring them down. Eventually. Not great focus fire there from Shambler, but he's practicing his splits. Well, ever dutiful, the Protoss rebuild from humble beginnings. Getting up to that double-digit count. The Iral Iris is about to be completed. We'll see the Calcure Pond almost certainly. And yeah, Shambler going up to even more bases once again. Phew. Well, you got to pour one out for the homie. BDB did try his darndest and absolutely could have taken this game, I feel like, if he had been able to act a little bit more decisively. But you can see here, Shambler's just wondering why his opponent didn't tap out when he lost so many workers. So he's scouting around the whole base, but little does he know, it's just pure damn tenacity. The Quaseth Horde is taking flight. Well, maybe taking feet, more like. Transferring even more workers. 85 now. Oh, it's the Alcag and, of course, the Calcure. I'm not sure we'll get to see any units out of the Alcag, but it's still pretty good. Nice to see the structures represented anyway. As soon as he pops his head out here. He's just going to see it, just an utter horde of Zerg. And GG is called. Well, he lasted about 15 minutes. Shambler will, once again, exit his group in first place. And that means that lucifirius is slated to take on BDB. Lucifirius will have to select the next map. We'll get our next match started nice and early here. In our left-hand side, the Dark Bronze Lucifirius Terran. Right-hand side, the Ultramarine Protoss BDB. BDB Protoss. Now, it's not going to be a fast gas this time around. So Lucifirius is planning something else, perhaps. But he picked Infinite Velocity, the map with the Niduses. What will he do next? Shambler came dangerously close on multiple occasions to getting owned in the early stages of the game. And it was by multiple players. So I do think parity is increasing. I mean, Lucifirius is a newcomer in that sense. But BDB has been around and due to availability, has been duking it out against the Shambler for a very long time. So to see that he's improving his craft a little bit is, I think, quite heartwarming, despite the fact that he isn't able to practice too much. So I like that. I think that's great. It's going to be a lattice first, so to be looking for either vassals for the air, or maybe like a simulacro march. We've actually seen that work out quite well in the past. But maybe not versus Terran. So I'm thinking it's probably going to be vassals just to force watchdogs. Lucifirius, on the other hand, is adding a stockade. And his scout is nearly upon Bidibi's palace. Adding a gateway as well. Okay, interesting. Mason will arrive to see the gateway and the lattice. Lattice obviously having been done first. And now we'll sneak off over here to do something suspicious, I think. He's adding a stockade. I love it. It will be scouted, so unfortunately for him, it's not going to be long for this world. But I really love it. Nice try! It's Ahmed first, followed by a Cyprian. Oh, it does get cancelled. I would have maybe fought that scribe with my Mason and then gone back to it, you know? Just get the fuck away from me, I'm working. Yeah, Shambler, you felt alive when those wraiths were pummeling you? Must have felt reasonable. Glad you guys are enjoying the matches thus far. Second stockade being added towards the ramp here. And the Cyprian is out, so it can ward off this vassal, but... You know, how long is the reaction? There it is. The one Mason that is under attack should be pulled away, and it is indeed pulled away. Oh no! The Cyprian is under attack. It needs to be repaired. It's not being repaired. No! Another Cyprian is here. No, lucifirius, don't die to vassals. They're being single-filed across the map. He is starting to add a watchdog. The watchdog itself is being attacked and will be killed. But that means that he's not attacking the economy. I mean, he doesn't get the cancel off, so it's still lost minerals, but... Oh, no. Oh, gee. Oh, no. Well, the watchdog is going to complete this time, I think. He needs to task another unit on. Keep building it. Oh, no. Oh, he's done it. Okay, he's safe. He's been saved from the vassal menace. Okay, all right. Safe, boys. Absolutely saved. That did way more damage than it should have. It killed 2 Cyprians. It killed a bunch of other things. Well, at least 2 Masons. It killed a watchdog. So that's 300 minerals and 100 gas. Plus it forced out 2 additional watchdogs. So that's a total of 500 minerals. That wouldn't probably not have been spent or lost if it weren't for the vassals. So Bidibi has to be feeling kind of good about himself right now. Now 2 Ahmeds have been pathed across the map. I don't know if they'll be able to spot... Yeah, I don't think they're going to spot the Nexus here. But they can absolutely do some damage because there's nothing back here. 2 Zealots did charge over here, and we did miss some of that action. An anchor being constructed in the back line. The stockades do not have a rally point, so the Cyprians will not pop out on the right side. But here come the... Okay, the scribes are being pulled in. They're going to charge right through the Nidus. And unfortunately for Lucy, indeed, the first move is has not worked out for him. But the anchor is going to complete, and Hurricanes are on the way. Meanwhile, the pylon has been picked off. There is money for Bidibi to rebuild or continue mining or whatever he wants to do. And 2 Hurricanes do show up here, but they need to get into the anchor. And, of course, they can just be ignored because it's an anchor. And it's Ahmed in an anchor. Despite having less workers, obviously that's probably not going to happen for too long. But on top of it all, the Mason count is dwindling, and Bidibi, well, he's still in control. I really liked the double Ahmed move out. Oh no, he's being blocked. He can't land it. You can't land there. Trying to add more Mavericks. Comes back in for another look. The watchdog goes down, so now more vassals can get added to the play. I think if he just pulls his Masons to the left-hand side here, he's probably safe, but he's definitely, he's being flummoxed. Get him, Ahmed. Get him from a range. Now that did some damage. Surrounding that Maverick. That poor feller. 2 HP left on that Zealot, but it's going to have the shields. Yeah, not quite enough. More Ahmed's being added. There's 700 minerals in the bank here, but Biddy B does have that Nexus over here. Single Vassal. Adding a Grand Library back at home. Adding more units. Second Anchor has been amassed. Not a bad shout. Needs to load it up with additional Mavericks. A lot of people get their units caught on like some kind of move command where they don't actually do much. Trying to do the run by, but there's Ahmed's here, so I don't think that's going to work out too well. There is no more Watchdogs, so the Vassal could theoretically do some damage. And now he's going to establish the anchors at the foot of the bridge there. You kill one Ahmed, you have to deal with 3. Oh no, he's done the spin. He's absolutely done the spin. There you go, you can stop. He's got more Mavericks. And it was on hold position, so it didn't do anything. Classic move. That's not exactly a bug, though. I mean, you're telling it to hold position, and it's under attack, so it's going to try to respond to a threat, but then it can't move because it's on hold position. I guess the bug is that it's not responding to a threat that it could, or a unit that it could respond to. So cycling out the wounded infantry, it looks like a pretty good name of the game. There are Drakonids on the other side of this Nidus, and some of his Mavericks aren't attacking, so yeah, Biddy B is about to charge through here almost certainly, right? Oh, yeah, there he goes. Off to the other side. And 3 Mavericks is not going to be enough to deal with this, so he does have more coming. Not a bad shout, and yes, indeed. He should have noticed that the Nidus was damaged, so this is going to pop up and no longer be a factor in the match. It left a psychological scar, and one in the worker count of Lucifirius as well. Now he can shuffle his anchors, a good move, obviously. Does have a Watchdog or 2, and will be going for an expansion. But Biddy B already has his up and running. Admittedly, only the lead of 6 workers. That is an opportunity. I don't know what the fuck was going on over there. There is an opportunity here. Oh, there's an Idle Mason. There you go. Shuffling his Watchdog placement to afford better gas returns. Not a bad idea. Little optimizations you can make as time goes on. Drakonids and an Idol, as well as an Atreus, are marching across the map. There's more Striders in the back. A Warden for anti-drop. Concerned about potential Wraith play, but that does not seem to be in the cards. I think with the Cyprians and Mavericks and Anchors and all of these Hurricanes at play as well, it seems kind of unlikely that Biddy B will be able to crack the ramp. But you never say never. I mean, it could happen. He's not positioned his units superbly well. That could be a lure, but instead he's actually going to be charging forward. And he could actually try to deal with this one Atreus, but I think Lucifirius smells something fishy. He's like, wait, you wouldn't just have one Atreus out here, right? Like, there's definitely more going on here. He's going to focus down the Idol since it does do some splash damage, but so does the Atreus. And unfortunately for him, he's not actually able to connect the dots here. This is something where you definitely prefer range and some other options where possible. Idol does go down. Ah, the Ahmed almost got some armor rend onto those Drakonids, but still going to be pretty good, and the Vassals end up getting a kill, but trading their life for it. More Stockades being added. Looks like he just wants to go hardcore bio on Tier 1. He has enough gas to tech up, but not enough minerals. We'll see if that changes his calculus at any point. Maybe he wants to start adding Eidolons at Tier 2. I still think if you're going to be going up against Protoss and you're building bio, absolutely can use the Covenant units. Savants can steal their attack rate, slowing them down over time, and the Eidolons snipe them from a pretty good range. So, honestly, that's a pretty strong idea. It'll eventually get countered by Ardent Authority units, or indeed, Argosy units, but still something that you can take in, to advantage if your opponent is allowing you to get up to Tier 2. In this case, maybe Lucifirius is too far behind for something like that, but it still feels like something that you could make work. Starting to set up a third base here. Which means I have to actually add more camera hockeys. One vassal getting tickled a little bit. Starting to add more vestries. I think that's probably just going to be for shamans and clerics, but I mean those are the 2 units that you make, but I don't think he's going to change his composition drastically because of this. Here comes the charge, but there's been a lot more Cyprians made, and Harakans are absorbing some of the initial attacks here from things like the Atreus. So he trades 1 Cyprian, 1 Harakan, and a decent amount of damage, but obviously that'll be cleaned up by the shamans that are pending. And some damage on the anchors, which needs to be repaired at some point. But he ends up getting a couple of various Strider units, right? So that's pretty good. Gathering around the old campfire here, the nanite fire. And a Mason even going to go ahead and repair some stuff. But what is coming next? The Atlas being built in the back base. A Warden being added to the remaining bases that Biddy B has. And his force over here camping out in the potential third location for Lucifirius is, I think, going to be a little bit on the difficult side. For him to crack anything with that. Adding an Amaranth. I don't know. What is his next play? He's starting to add Empyreans, and hey, we've got an Uptecton to crack the ramp. That's not a bad play either. And yeah, I mean, if he's not able to add Covenants to the game, you know, anytime soon, it feels like maybe Lucifirius is just going to be at a very heavy disadvantage, right? And when you're on the ramp with an Eidolon, they have 12 range, by the way. It's not nothing. But that's only versus ground. The Empyreans, while they don't outrange the Eidolons, don't take that much damage from them either. It's an attempted move out. It might be a little bit premature given the amount of crowd control in that area, so he ends up losing a couple of Harakans and a Cyprian for his efforts. He doesn't have any Watchdogs over here either, but the Empyrean is still going to take a while to get across the map. Units are being filed over one by one as they pop out of the rally. But he'd be trying to spend a little bit more money overall. Let's see if he ends up popping anything else out of that Ancestral Archives in the meantime. That's what I want to know. A whole host of Cyprians have continuously been added. And back here we have a starport being put to use as the reservoirs are capped. Okay, so if Lucifirius holds out for the next, I want to say, 2 minutes, if nothing catastrophic occurs to him in the next 2 minutes, then he could spike up quite well. Cyprians will respond to this Empyrean. The attack is coming in, but the Shamans are on the front line. That's not really what they want to be. They're going to go ahead and deploy. They are absorbing some shots from the back, which might be, you know, constituting some sort of advantage. This Empyrean will eventually, you know, I actually think it's going to be a little bit close, but I think it's going to go ahead and kill that anchor. Meanwhile, the Striders have all fallen on the front, and the Atreises have to fall away, though they will obviously take a dub there. And the Shaman... Okay, so the anchor here is in a pretty good spot, right? Like, it's not the end of the world that the anchor has fallen, but now the Uptecton has joined the fight, and that's going to make mincemeat of a lot of this, right? The Starport is training Gorgons. Not a bad idea, per se, but I think his... Unfortunately, that 2-minute timer has not even halfway passed, right? And we're talking about a catastrophe. Now, the Uptecton and the Atreus' shots are being absorbed by the stockades, but it's just Mavericks over here. If it was something else, maybe we could see something in action. You can see that slow going off for the Empyrean, but not going to be quite enough. Trying to use his own buildings as blockers for the projectiles, but it's not quite enough for him. And I think that's probably going to have to be GG called. Even if he ends up reposting this attack, what can he do, right? There's a fourth base that's super gas intensive coming along the way. Oh yes, I was mistaken. It's 9 range, not 10 by default. So I thought it was 10 range by default, but they only narrowly have less range than I thought. Either way, it might be a mystery that lucifirius will unravel later on, because this game, we are not seeing any Eidolons. We are seeing BDB supremacy. Protoss supremacy. It's a very different style than what lucifirius is likely used to. But, yeah, unfortunately, his units are just going up in flames. He's banking everything on an apostle. But even if he rezzed all of these units and kept them alive somehow, it just wouldn't be enough. His opponent has too many things. He's adding a sentinel in the back, desperately trying to hold on. A Heracles nears the exit. Gorgons also doing the same. Well, one of those Empyreans came dangerously close to dying again, but that's not going to be enough either. Oh no. The Aptecton and the Atreus can't actually... Oh no! Oh, he dies instantly. There goes the Apostle. More Sentinels being added, but it's not going to be enough. We knew it was not going to be enough the whole time. That one Atreus does get bopped by the Madcap. Oh, actually... Hey, there you go. Aptecton's down. Lucifirius is harvesting, he's mining this game for as many interactions as he can get his hands on. But GG is called, and Biddy B will take a game. Remember that first to 2 wins is going to qualify to playoffs in 2nd place, and therefore, Lucifirius selects the next map. It will be Death Spiral. And I will take this opportunity to BRB and use the bathroom. I am back. And you know what? For the record, I think you could beat Protoss with Mass Wraith. I don't know if it would be too easy. But in that map, you have more minerals and double gas in your base, right? So, I don't know. It feels like one base, double like Mass Wraith could absolutely win the game. But it would be pretty cheesy. By the way, pretty much all of the AoE, besides Empyreans, well, I guess Empyreans versus air specifically have interception. But everything that Protoss has that deals splash, not literally everything, but like everything at the early stages, is all intercept. So you can't reasonably... Like, you could micro against it by like leading one Wraith, having one Wraith lead the charge, take the initial fight. If they're targeting with it, then maybe it's a little bit harder, but... All right. In the mid left, the Lemon Protoss, Ben Taberski. In the mid right, the Midnight Green Terran, Lucifirius. Fast gas here. Lucifirius might be trying the mass wraith strategy again. Maybe a little bit faster this time around. Or it might just be a stock standard fulcrum opener. Going to be a gateway into a scout for Ben. No rally point for the Ministry, so it's going to take a little bit here. It's going to be a star pad. I was going to say Fulcrum because he was waiting for 200 minerals, but that's just a coincidence. He was throwing even me off. And the scout is on the way. What will Biddy B's reaction, Biddy B? Second gateway. Zealot first. We'll see if that gets canceled for a different unit as the star pad becomes clear. And a second star pad is instantaneously started. Start pad. Biddy B could be harassing these workers with his scribe, but instead it's not going to be the case. And we're just going to see a redux. Now, Shambler struggled a lot with this, but he didn't know it was coming. Biddy B knows that Lucifirius will, can and will, fire away at this, right, and really give it a shot. He's adding a Warden. But his first unit is a Zealot. Obviously, Zealots take a lot of Mason drills and attacks to kill, so this might force one of the Wraiths to stick around, and the Scribe is still alive as well. Lucifirius might not remember that the Scribe could cheese him. He did spot the Scribe there. Not sure if the Shimmer was spotted by Biddy B by comparison. And here comes the Zealot. With the Scribe combined, can absolutely do some damage here. Now, this is where the drill has to happen. He's starting to pull and decollide, but falls back. His Wraiths are going to fly a little bit away, and one of them even comes in back over here. Look at this. The Zealot is actually being very successfully drilled out, and the Scribe has already fallen, so this pylon is no longer a threat. Now the Zealot is going to look to get at least a kill before it eventually dies. And look at that, more Wraiths coming out. The worst fear of the Biddy B is realized. There's some Drakodins coming. It takes a lot of damage to kill a Drakodin with one shot or a couple of salvos or whatever from a Wraith. So you're going to need to see way more than that. Well, Biddy B, meanwhile, or Lucifirius, meanwhile, might be looking to add just some more, just even more. He could obviously add another star pad pretty soon as he continues to saturate his gas, but he's still one off from each side. Wraiths are now arriving. Drakodins are obviously going to be wise to these shenanigans, and one of the Scribes gets dangerously close to dying, but is not going to happen. Pylon finally falls back at home. He's going to add another star pad. This still could work. Biddy B did express frustration earlier at the presence of very fast air units. In this case, he was talking about Gorgakors and Nathrikors and not Wraiths, but I feel like this has a chance, especially if he starts mixing in an Ant Seal or two to protect the shots in the initial phase. Unfortunately for our Lucifirius Wraith player, he is starting to take a little bit of damage here. He's going to go ahead and move one forward, which actually, funnily enough, does force the Biddy B to second-guess himself a little bit. These Wraiths can absolutely, pick apart or tickle the Drakodins on their approach. This Wraith is going to just sit here and idle and try to pay attention to whether or not there's another move out, which is a good play from Lucifirius. I don't know if it was intentional exactly, but it is a good play. More Dracodons. Wraith does get recalled. Anseal is here. So we see that particular thing being called out. Just one or two more shots from a Wraith will go ahead and pop that Dracodon. So here comes the Anseal trying to protect it. It's down to pretty low. It's down to below half HP now. Remember, there's still that wounded Dracodon, though, and yeah, at this point, the Wraith Swarm is already overbearing. Look at that. The 4 Dracodons get popped like nobody's business. And we do have only 8 Wraiths, and many of them are wounded. More of them are on the way. He's queued some, but doesn't have his 3rd star pad, maybe on the same control group, or either way, isn't actually using it for anything right now. Could obviously add more to it. He's starting to add a stockade now, I think. So there is that. And his rally point is not tethered to the ramp either. So, again, this is a little awkward here. He's going to try to clump up, use the Anseal for detection there, and as well as protection. Protection and deflection. One of the Dracodons dangerously close to death. The other one already found it. Adding another gateway. It's just Mass Dracodon right now is the response, but 4 of them are alive. Another gateway. Okay, interesting. Going to add some Zealots for the run-bys. The stockades are going to be filtering out. Eventually, you're going to see some shamans, I think. This ministry is here, so lucifirius has a better economy despite going for a very cheesy opener. And I think it's because BDB has stubbornly avoided building lattices for idols or grand libraries for Atreus or anything like that, right? He's sticking to the script of Gateway. I think he wants to see if he can beat it in a more conventional manner. But the vestry is already done, so the first shaman will soon be upon us. Obviously, it does cost some gas, so going to be a moment. And yeah, instantaneously harvesting more gas over here. Still could be harvesting with a 3rd one over. I feel like he just doesn't remember that. Like, he's played a lot of Fraudarchies before we changed it so that, you know, this used to be the case where you only needed 2 workers for the gas, but you do need 3 for full saturation. That 3rd worker is not as efficient, but it still is a thing. Meanwhile, BDB just building nothing but gateway units. The Zealots can withstand a large barrage of the Wraiths, and yeah, you can see here the Shaman getting a lot of healing done. More Masons being transferred down. Starting to harvest additional minerals. And if nothing else, he's got full health Wraiths. He could get bamboozled by this attack, though. He really needs to consider his options here. He only has Shamans. There's nothing else for defense other than the Wraiths. And he did happen to wait long enough to, you know, realize what's happening here. So, unfortunately, a lot of his units were on a move command again. That first Shaman just gets, well, I guess this is technically the second Shaman, gets absolutely ramsacked. But here come the Zealots, doing their best to do some eco damage. This is not really the answer BDB needs exactly, though, in my opinion, because what we're seeing out of BDB is, I mean, he doesn't have the expansion. I don't think he knows that lucifirius has this expansion, right? But it's absolutely something that he's got. Adding more Wardens, that's not going to help. You need an engram or something. There is no splash. There is no splash out of here. In fact, there's no anti-air at all. It's just the Zealots. There's some Ecclesias coming, but that's not going to last too long. 22 Wraiths and counting. Just going to go straight for the pylon. And that's it. No more power. Well, that was a Warden that was on the way, not a pylon, but, you know, better safe than sorry. You could probably kill this Ecclesias, but I don't know if it matters too much. That pylon just narrowly doesn't power the lower Warden, but at this point, does it really matter? The Zealots are going to come in, but there's an Achmed here, and nothing else. Actually, there's 2 Achmeds. I don't think he really can kill him here. Not before all these Wraiths kill all the buildings. Lucifirius, you've got yourself a victory on your debut. Don't worry, that Achmed just... He's a punching bag, you know, he doesn't need much. Achmed was there as he was buying time? Question mark? More Wraiths being added. The last production structure is being... Okay, no, he's got a Nexus on the way over here. Has he done it? The Scribes are here to help. They're actually, I mean, in a way, they're helping because the ant seals are being reduced in terms of their shields. But yeah, there's nothing that can attack up, and there are more wraiths being made. Surprise, surprise. Well, it worked. GG. And there it goes. Lucifirius gets on the board with Mass Wraith. This means we have one final map for you guys to close out the group stage of Ascension 5. And I couldn't be happier to have BiddyB select that map. It will either be Situ or Nitro Valley, and it's Situ. This is the decider. This decides who makes it to playoffs and who's eliminated in last place of the group. Situ, the new map. Lucifirius, the new kid on the block. And Ben Taberski, the guy with new kids. Well, I don't know how new they are, but he's got kids. I love that this exists. I mean, you have to change this, Beaver, by the way. This is awkward. There's no movement between the minerals, and something like this will happen all the time. Anyway, we do have BiddyB. The Beaver Protoss on the left-hand side versus Lucifirius, the Ultramarine Terran on the right-hand side. What's it going to be for BiddyB? What's it going to BiddyB? That's my question. Looks like it's just workers for now. A little bit of gas being harvested here by Lucifirius. The Scribe has gone right past it. Ladies and gentlemen, BiddyB is not interested in playing a standard game. He's tired. It's almost 11 o'clock. He's ready to pack it in. Or be packed in. And Lucifirius doesn't scout. He doesn't do much scouting. He was about to scout. He puts his fulcrum down. There's a gateway warping in his backyard. I fear for the Terran. I think Lucifirius is going to get slapped. But it also kind of depends on the timing. Here comes a second Scribe. This one's going to make it seem like it's normal scout timing, which is actually a pretty sick mind games here for BiddyB. Going to go ahead and drop a Warden to protect his investment. BiddyB did tell me privately that he was thinking about this for cheese. If you send one of your first Scribes across the map super early, you can absolutely do something like this. But he doesn't have anything at home, so Lucifirius' alarm bells are going to be ringing really, really quickly. It's going to be a Zealot. The Fulcrum can train. Oh, he's probably going to bank for a Goliath, though. He's kind of busted his harvesting because he's got so much gas. So he's going to wait and train a Goliath. The Zealot's going to be halfway done. At this stage, yeah, Lucifirius is pretty sure something weird's happening. So his Goliath is going to start. It does take 25 seconds to complete. So we're looking at about 240 before that Goliath is out. There's a Warden creep coming. And here comes the proxy Zealot. Now, as long as Lucifirius doesn't panic here, he can absolutely just drill this Zealot into oblivion, which is what he's kind of doing right now. Lucifirius could, BiddyB's micro is a little bit poor. And here comes the Goliath. So I think the first unit is not going to be too advantageous here. He will actually get out there at the very least. And he scopes out what's happening. He's like, all right, something weird's happening over here. I still think this is kind of on a knife's edge, though. It wasn't as immediately effective as he would have liked it to be. This Goliath could be scoping out over here and attacking the pylon from the other side. Oh, but the anchor is in range. He has to rebuild it a little bit further back. Now, a Warden has 7 range. So does a Goliath. Goliath and the anchor, 9 range. So that's the plan for Lucifirius here. The counter to a Warden rush can and often is building anchors. Back at home for Biddy B, nothing. So this is where it all is right now. A second gateway even being added. So there you go. The Warden is going to get slapped from a distance. The look at this. The Zealot flank trying to get a little bit of damage. But, oh my god, they're so defensible because of the fact that there's no holes here. Second anchor being made. Gonna try to buy some time here, but obviously when the units in the anchor have a target, they just have a target, man. An engram is the response. 9 range. That's the same as the anchor, so it does... Well, the Goliath and the anchor specifically. What's he going to be building behind this? Just more Zealots. He wants to overwhelm them. Maybe he saw Mystery Me take on 3 Crow on this map and wants to carry the torch. Still nothing back at home for Biddy B. He's all in on this play. So, like, moving a single Vulture across the map could actually ruin him. What's the response here? The liftoff is going to start. There's multiple pylons powering this engram, so that's not really the end of the world. Five Zealots coming. That other anchor is airborne. Yeah, this is not going to be long for the world. So the first anchor falls almost instantaneously. And the Goliath is trapped. It's going to just be popped immediately. Oh, I think some of his units were tickling something else, too, on top of it all. Oh, they were attacking the engram. Well, if he repairs this, he might be able to keep this alive. But he's not repairing it. This is his only hope versus the proxy engram. He needs to repair it, but he's not going to. Oh no, lucifirius. You're being cheesed to death. He calls GG. He was still in the game. He could have just backed away from the engram. They can't lift it off. Lucifirius concedes. And Biddy B, by the skin of his proxy, qualifies. Now that is something, boys. I was not expecting that. What a way to qualify. He makes it happen. Biddy B 2 and 3 will make it into the next stage of the tournament. We need those Hurricanes. We needed Ahmed to save the day, but it wasn't enough. Ladies and gentlemen, our top 8 is decided. We filtered out the players who could not cut the cheese, apparently. And it's going to be... we got to talk about playoff seeding, obviously. So let's have a moment of silence. We thank Lucifirius for his entrance here. I definitely think he could have done some pretty good damage. And he did mass Wraith Biddy B out of the tournament, maybe inspiring some of our surviving Terran players towards such play. Scholar was watching closely, I know. And that will do it for Group D. If we head on over to our schedule here today, I can tell you that Mystery Meat and Veek ended up qualifying out of Group A. First and second place, of course. Following that, it was Keen and DF from Group B. Group C was Neblime and Scholar, and Group D was the Shambler and Biddy B. So this finalizes our top 8. It is in a situation where you, when you look at it, it kind of maybe makes sense. Veek was a surprise because he wasn't even supposed to play, but he ended up being an emergency sub due to some health issues. I appreciate 3 Crow being willing to sub out for Scholar, but Scholar did end up showing up, and then at the same time, 3 Crow was being attacked by fucking work calls. So it was kind of like the perfect storm for why we ended up going back on that. But we had our Terran non-Terran group action the entire time, so there was at least that. So now it's time to seed our competitors. So if you're not sure how this one works, generally speaking, the way that this all plays out, most commonly, is I take the players who have the most sort of proven track record, and I sort of assort them based on what we already know about their defined skill. So Mystery Meat is the returning champion, the reigning champion of Ascension. So I would say that he's probably going to go ahead and be first place as far as first seeding goes. Meanwhile, the other players in no particular order that qualified were Keen, Neblime, and the Shambler in first place from their groups. The Shambler has to be second place for me because of the same reason, you know, in terms of like recent form. Niblime technically obviously made it over the Shambler in ZVZ, but now he's a different race, so there's some, you know, understanding there. Like if Mystery Meat had made it to the grand finals and lost to Niblime, then the fact that, you know, Mystery Meat was the reigning champion or like was reigning grand finalist wouldn't necessarily matter as much because he also changed his race. But Mystery Meat, despite losing one match to Veek, looked fairly clean, I think, and I think it worked out, yeah. So looking at that, Mystery Meat, I think, takes the first seed. But I guess it is kind of close because Shambler took his group. I mean, maybe not convincingly, right? Lucifirius and I mean, in a sense, he's 4-0, so it's hard to say not convincingly. But you guys know what I'm saying. So first and second are going to be Mystery Meat and the Shambler. Keen, for me, comes out in 4th seed because of his absolute lack of familiarity with the project. He did get cheesed. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He just relied on mechanics, and that worked out. And on the side of Niblime, that kind of leaves him in the 3rd place spot, right? He changed his race. He did exit 4-0, and he has an understanding of the project pretty deeply now. So we have to give that to him over Keen. And that works out. Shambler, it was 4-1 for Mystery Meat, if that's what you're thinking. Yes, Luciferius, your first appearance was absolutely a success. And I can absolutely give you Class 2 Cosmonarch now that you've participated in a tournament. So remind me to do that after this seeding section. So we're going to jump into the seeding of the 2nd place players. The 2nd place players were Veek, DF, Scholar, and Biddyby. Again, going by project, I would say like familiarity terms, right? Honestly, I think the hardest part is probably like Veek defeated Mystery Meat in a match on Boskevine. So I have to say that Veek, just based on that alone, even though he's not played super much, he kind of shoots to the top for me, right? Like DF has been around a lot. Biddyby has been the most active of the bunch. Scholar's like the newest person. So I'm not really sure how to like sort that. Like maybe DF ends up being the last seed due to lack of familiarity with the project. Or is he the second to last seed and Scholar is the last seed due to the lack of familiarity with the project? Like, I'm not 100% sure about that one. Like 7 and 8 are kind of interchangeable. But I think it goes Veek and then Biddyby for 5th and 6th. And then we would see Scholar and DF for 7th and 8th. Or I would flip those and it would be Scholar at 8th and DF and 7th and stuff. So that's sort of my conundrum right now. Because I'm not 100% sure who would win in a heads-up match. I think Scholar would probably take it. But I also don't know if I seed it based on that either, right? Like, that's where you think about that. So I think DF will be 8th seed. Scholar will be 7th. Biddyby 6th. Veek 5th. And this opens us up to a matchup between... Well, we have our quarterfinals, essentially. And remember, this is a double elimination bracket, so your first loss here just puts you into the lower bracket. It's not a guaranteed tournament exit just yet. But it looks like we are going to have... Let me see. I'm not actually asking for a drum roll here, but I'm going to also make a last-minute adjustment if need be to avoid any mismatches here. But it looks like we don't have any. Okay, so I can comfortably go forward with this. All right. Our first quarterfinal matchup, Mystery Meat against Darkened Fantasies. Protoss versus Protoss. Best of 5. All of these are going to be best of 5. Our second quarterfinal matchup will be Veek 7 against Keen. That is a PVZ. Well, Keen is the top seed, so ZVP. Our third quarterfinal matchup will be Niblime against Biddyby. TVP. And our fourth quarterfinal matchup will be Scholar versus the Shambler. That is going to be a ZVT, as Shambler, of course, is the top seed. This website is just confusing and puts the top seed differently sometimes. So I will, of course, post this schedule, or I post this these matchups in a moment here in the events page. So it's funny because he said in the chat that he's going to challenge Shambler and then said JK, basically, but it turned out to be the case. So this is based on how the seeding went. I'll make a thread in the Discord server for tracking that. And The way that this works is, so whoever loses between Mystery Meat DF and Veek Keen will face off against each other in the losers round 1. Of course, the winners will face off against each other in that side of the bracket, etc. And the same thing is true on the other side, right? So if we imagined that it went the way of the seeding, where Mystery Meat defeated DF and Keen defeated Veek, then it would be Veek DF losers round 1. That would be the first lower match, and then Mystery Meat would take on Keen in the winners match. And then that would be sort of like how the tournament starts off, right? So there's going to be many matches here, boys. We are going to have 14 playoffs series for you. A whopping number, double-digit number. All of them best of 5, except maybe we'll have best of 7 in the grand final. I haven't decided on that yet. I guess it would make sense, actually. Because I was planning on doing all of the quarterfinals casted from replay. Like, all of these playoffs matches, ideally, we'll cast from replays. Well, maybe not ideally. Ideally, we would be able to cast them sequentially. But based on realistic scheduling, I feel like we'll cast them from replays. I think the quarterfinals matches, Mesk and I will do together in a round here. And it'll basically be like a series of matches. So we'll do the first 4 series in one stream, ideally. Then we'll do the next set where we do the winners matches and the first round losers matches in one stream. Then we'll do the winners finals and the losers round 2 and losers round 3 in one stream, because that's 4 more matches. And then we'll have the losers finals into a best of 7 grand final on the last stream. So there'll be 4 streams of playoffs, I think. So thank you, lucifirius, for building wraiths and other things. You did build some Ahmeds too. Pretty exciting stuff here, boys. I'm excited to see where we go from here with the tournaments. I'm really excited to see our first double elimination playoffs. We'll figure out the organization over the next... well, I'll just post up some organization stuff, and we'll try to figure out, who can be a ref at any given time based on availability. It's true. Durandal's almost did defeat you. Okay. I guess I should also put out the call. If you're interested in being a quote-unquote referee, which really is just you recording your first person, like using OBS to record your first person observing, which we will use in the event that the replays break, which hopefully they never do. That way we have like an emergency fallback for the cast. That would be ideal. So we basically need somebody to volunteer to spectate these playoffs matches. It can be a player who isn't playing in one of the matches. That's fine too. So, for example, if Shambler wanted to be the referee for Mystery Meat versus DF, like that could be a thing. Or if, DF wanted to be the referee for Veek versus Keen, that could be a thing. So we'll see about that. But that's just what we're going to have to work out the details on. And thank you guys for participating in yet another Ascension. This is the 5th one, if you can believe it. I'm looking forward to going even further beyond, as Goku would say. And all right, I'll be pinging you guys later on with information. Of course, if you're a playoffs qualification man. And until then, GG's. Don't die, don't suck. All the things that Ben Tversky says when you play a match against him. And I'm sure there'll be some homies hanging out to play some matches as well. So you can check that out over time. Canada moments as a ref. Well, hopefully there aren't any. All right. Peace.